One of the things I love so much about being a person who celebrates the witch seasons, the metaphysical um, points in the year, are all the opportunities to start fresh. So, as a person who follows a witch practice, there's every new moon, right? There are the points of the year where we have fresh seasons to roll with. But at this time of the year, in autumn and winter, we actually have 3 different dates that can qualify as sort of the witch's new year, or the new year of the goddess, or the feminine, or whatever you want to call it. Well, one of them is more solar in nature. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The first has already passed, and that is Halloween, or Samhain, which most will call the witch's new year. Now, the second one is coming up if you're listening to this in real time, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We know that you were born magical. We know that you are intuitive, and we know that you are brimming with everyday enchantment. Here at the Sisters Enchanted, we believe in intention, we believe in intuition, and we believe in everyday magic. Welcome in to the Expedition to Soul podcast. All right, y'all, I'm a little tangled here. I got to untangle. There we go. Hope that didn't make too much noise for you. When is it? It's, November. It is November, and in my neck of the woods, it's finally a little bit cold out. We had like a pretty warm spell at the end of October, and it was like really hot out. We had like an 80-degree day, and right before Halloween, we had like a couple of them. I was at a playground with my kids and a friend, and my son was like, his face was just beet red. And I was like, it is supposed to be autumn. What is going on here? But I suppose that happens sometimes from time to time. This was one of those times. So I hope that everybody's been having an amazing spooky season. Remember that the festivals, as we celebrate them, so Samhain is a season. It's not just a day. Halloween, we celebrate October 31st. Samhain is actually the Gaelic word for November. So for all of the people who like to follow those, uh, European or the British, English, Irish, Scottish sort of tradition, Samhain it's a whole season. It's not just a day, just like every other festival in the Wheel of the Year. The markers, they are seasons. They're not just days. And so this season is upon us. Spooky season, the thinning of the veil, right? It's all here as the days get shorter, the nights get longer, and we move toward Yule. So that brings me to this topic we're talking about today. And we're talking about Lunar Samhain. Lunar Samhain. So one of the things, now I have been reading books on metaphysics and nature spirituality, paganism, witchcraft since, for years and years and years, over 20 years now. And along the way, and just chatting with people, like-minded people, I have really learned how different this practice looks for different people. And this is one of the things I know to be true around witchery practices in particular, is that I say this, that witchery itself, witchcraft, has nothing to do with religion. Now there's paganism, which can be a religion for some people, but it could also not be a religion for some people. There is Wicca, which is very much a structured religion that centers, it's like modern applications of what we know to be true about ancient people in countries like Germany, Norway, England, Ireland, Scotland, those kinds of things, right? Sometimes it's also kind of lumped with neo-paganism, which I don't super love. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent about who even knows what. But witchery itself is not a religion, and we can see this in the very different ways people apply these practices to their life. So I don't know a single person who identifies as a witch, or like a priestess in their life whose practice looks the same as somebody else's. They are all very, very different. And when I talk to people about the witch's new year or when it is that they set their intentions for the year ahead, it's also very different for everybody. So for some people, that is Halloween. That's Samhain. It's November, like December 31st to All Souls Day on November 2nd. And somewhere in there that they are looking at this as their new year. So the entrance into the dark months. For others, this is Lunar Samhain. So Lunar Samhain occurs at the new moon in Scorpio. Now the lunar cycles are not fixed dates, so sometimes this is earlier in the season, sometimes it's later in the season, and that's why Easter, the celebration of Easter moves. It's aligned with the moons. So, Lunar Samhain happens though with the new moon in Scorpio. This year, this is in November, November 13th. This is a 2023 podcast. But if you're listening to this later, just look for the new moon in Scorpio. It should be in October or November, or it will be. Some years are like strange though, and the way things line up, like the astronomical new moon is in a different sign and then it shifts really quick. Anyway, but this year is not like that. Most years are not. Sometimes that does happen though. But this year, Lunar Samhain is November 13th, 2023. And some folks will have this be their new year, like the witch's new year, and they'll have a little, like a dinner and they'll set their intentions or they'll make a vision board or they'll meditate for the year ahead. Now, I love the Scorpio new moon for the witch's new year for a lot of reasons. It's actually not when I would really I'll be honest, I don't really celebrate like on a day what the new year is, but Lunar Samhain I do love as an option because we have the story of Scorpio. So the sun is in Scorpio during this time. And the story of Scorpio is all about transformation. Now, there's a couple different stories around Scorpio, and it depends on where you're pulling from in mythology and culture. One is the archetype of the actual scorpion, which will sting, but it will also sting itself. So that's what's important to know about Scorpio is that it's not just about stinging other people, but will also sting itself because it's in its nature to transform for death and rebirth. That is the nature of Scorpio, is death and rebirth. Now, when we think about the death card in tarot, for example, if you don't know anything about tarot, you might see that and think, oh no, it's a bad premonition. But that's not the case. Really, what happens with death is that everything must end for something new to start. So even a day like today must end so that tomorrow comes. You must, quit a job before you get a new job. You must clean out the refrigerator before you put new stuff in the refrigerator. Like everything must come to an end before something new starts. And that is the very nature of Scorpio. The Scorpio is also aligned with the energy of the Phoenix. So that's really burning things down for them to rise again from the ashes. That's what a Phoenix does. It lights itself ablaze, it dies, it turns to ash, and then it rises again. That's also a Scorpio story. So aligned with Scorpio is also Hades, the lord of the underworld, so to speak. And we are reminded that we create our own underworlds. We create our own thought loops and stories. Really, this is a kind of a silly example, but I do like it because I think it makes sense for people. If you've ever seen that show Lucifer on Netflix, if you haven't, you should totally go watch it. But Lucifer, he's actually like a really great guy in the show. He's really funny, great character, but he is the devil. And what happens in the TV show, now again, this is a TV show, so I fully understand this is fiction, but I think it like aligns though with a lot of what we can believe about our inner shadows, which we're going to talk about in a minute. In that show, he's the devil, right? And people who are in hell are there of their own doing because they are living in their own hell loop. So the thing that is causing them inner turmoil until they reconcile that for themselves, they are stuck living that same thing over and over and over again. But the premise is like we all think the devil's this bad guy, right? But he doesn't actually put anybody there. It's everybody putting themselves there, and they have to come to terms and heal themselves to get out of that hell loop. And he can't do that for them. They have to do it. And I think that is this story of Hades that we see is like, there is this underworld, but how does that apply to us? It's our own internal underworld, our own like where we're causing ourselves pain and suffering because we are stuck in these thought loops about ourselves or life, and we've got to transform them and rise from those stories. So we see that in Hades. Scorpio is also aligned with the planets Mars and Pluto. So Mars is sort of that like that it's a very creative energy, but it's also a can be like a fight for what you want kind of energy, a take charge, a little bit aggressive sort of energy. And then Pluto is the planet of power. So having that power to transform and doing what you need to do to transform. So all of these stories together, they really align with this new moon. And with new moons, we set intentions and we understand how do we want to feel going forward. With those intentions, which is how do we want to feel going forward, we can also set goals that align with those feelings. So what do I need to do? What do I want to do in my life that will make me feel the way I want to feel, right? And doing this inner work that comes with Scorpio, traversing our own inner landscapes, our own power structures where we're keeping ourselves limited, or we're, going to war with ourselves, like that Mars energy. Where are we in our own thought loops and trapped ourselves in our own kind of hellscape, for lack of another way to say it? I mean, it doesn't have to be really the way we would think of that word, but where are we really being our own worst enemy, and how can we transform that to step into the next year of our lives? So this Scorpio new moon energy, which would be Lunar Samhain, really does make a lot of sense as a marker for a witch's new year. It's about understanding your shadows, what you need to transform in your life through yourself. What part of you do you need to do away with? Do you need to burn down and then rise like the phoenix in your life? Now, if you're curious about this lunar Samhain time, we can look at lunar Sabbats for all of the festivals. And it's really, I mean, I like to look at the new moon for the dark months of the year that's closest to the festival. And then for the light months, the full moon because of that brightness. But that's really my preference. There is no right way to do that whatsoever. Now, in the method that we teach, the system we teach a framework called the 5I framework. And it is our way of taking all of this beautiful stuff we love, like working with the moon and energy and doing ritual and writing spells and using tarot and crystals, all of this, and then combining it into a practical framework so we can actually run through this framework every day of our lives to keep the growth work top of mind. And then we can implement it on a deeper level in our metaphysical, witchery, spiritual practices, whatever you want to call, whatever word you're aligning with that. So typically at the full moon, we would say that's like a shadow work time because the moon is being illuminated. So we're really able to see our shadows. But with the Scorpio new moon, that is a brilliant time to really look at your shadows also. So this whole Scorpio season is a perfect time to be kind of diving into what was so you can transform and get ready for what will be. Seasonally, we're in this visioning season, which is very emotional, very dreamy. We're kind of like, trying to understand what we want for the future. And shadow work does tie in with that as well. That's why it's a framework, it's a system, it all works together. So, doing this shadow work for yourself, though, to understand where are you holding yourself back? Where are the stories in your energy that need to be released so that you can feel the way you want to feel? What needs to be transformed during the lunar cycle, during the Scorpio lunar cycle? And what intentions are you going to set to do that with the Scorpio new moon? So after this lunar cycle is the lunar cycle that contains Yule, right? So a lunar cycle lasts about 29 days, 29 and a half, I think, somewhere around there. And this lunar cycle is our Scorpio lunar cycle. The next lunar cycle has Yule in it. And Yule is the shortest day of the year. And when the sun rises again the next day, the sun returns and then the days get longer again. So that's another marker of the new year would be the shortest day of the year and then the sun rising again. And all the days get longer after that. So that is actually like a kind of in the way we would look at festivals and cycles and New Year's, I think more like the most aligned with the new year. But all of this work flows together. I think you can see how it beautifully ties together in a rhythm, which is why what we do here, what we teach is like this real zooming out of cycles and rhythms. And I really believe that it's our disconnection from these seasonal cycles, from these lunar rhythms, the seasonal rhythms that is bringing so much chaos and uncertainty to our lives because we're just every day like waking up and do, or feel bad about not doing, even though there are all of these seasonal and lunar indicators of time where we push and then we like relax. We push and we relax. And when we follow these rhythms and these cues from nature and from the lunar cycles, that's actually when we can create in our lives much faster than when we ignore these cycles. So there was a study that I read that was done in 2017, and it was actually the study was they took a bunch of studies and put all the data together, and it was like 50,000 people, I think. And the study was called A Coordinated Analysis of Big Five Trait Change Across 16 Longitudinal Samples. That's a really long. So they're looking at these traits of people. And what the study did, it was it had people rate themselves uh, around how they thought of themselves in these 5 areas. And what the study found was that every decade, so every 10 years, so 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, so on, every 10 years, people rated themselves 1 to 2% like less likely to care about that thing. So, what other people think of them, their appearance, etc. So every 10 years, people rated themselves 1 to 2% less likely to care. And I hear this from women all the time in our community who turn 50 and then 60, and they say, you just care less and less. So we all know that that's true. People care less about what other people think about them as they age up. Now, here's the thing though, is think about that. Only 1 to 2% though. So like over all these years, you're only like slightly caring less. What if we could do the work of aligning to the seasons, and we can look to the lunar cycles and the zodiac and the lessons in mythology and the lessons in nature and the medicine of the moon and our energy stories and really just deconstruct all of this stuff that holds us back. And instead of waiting for 1 to 2% change every 10 years, we can make significant, massive change using ritual, using the lunar cycles, our energy centers, with the tools like tarot to help us see the stories we're not seeing ourselves, and our crystals to support us and amplify the process, right? We can use all of this to make way more than 1 to 2% change in a way shorter time. So if you're not following the lunar cycles and the seasons, and you don't have a framework to help you to expand into where it is that you want to be in your life, because we all need a framework, we have those tools to help you. Just let us know. We'll give you like the information on our programs, but really, you know, tap into the seasons, my friends. Tap into these zodiac stories and the healing that they provide for us. So Lunar Samhain is coming up, and take some time to reflect on what needs to be transformed. Where are you holding yourself back and keeping yourself trapped in your own underworld? And it doesn't have to be that significant. It can just be like, maybe you have a real perfectionist thing around the way the clothes are folded and put away. And like every week at laundry time, it's stressful. You don't like it. And it could be that, like that, small of a thing, but just letting go of that can make such a big change in your energy for the whole rest of that day. And maybe for you, it's something really big, like a financial shame or a body shame or a relationship shame. And the stories that you're telling yourself about how it can't be different for you, or why it can't be, or why things are too hard. I hear that a lot. It's too hard. It feels hard. Everything is hard. And if something feels hard, it's because there's something missing. There's something you don't know, or a tool you don't have. It could be confidence. It could be an actual tool. It could be a lack of knowledge, right? That's why things feel hard. But we keep ourselves buried down because of that. And we don't trust ourselves to figure out the way forward or to just get the resource to help us figure out the way forward. So Lunar Samhain is a perfect time to investigate these things, understand how you want to feel, identify the stories keeping you feeling trapped so you can transform that and step forward brilliantly and with so much magic into the next chapter for you. All right, y'all, Lunar Samhain. I would love to hear if you're in our community groups for any of our classes. Let me know your thoughts on Lunar Samhain. Have you ever heard of it? Do you celebrate it? We used to host every year we've hosted our Halloween event around Lunar Samhain. So you've probably heard about it if you're in our membership community. This year we had to change it because of just scheduling things that were happening. But so you might have heard about it. And if you are not in our community, you can share on our blog posts or in our Instagram comments or over on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you too. If you're in our circle group, our community space, we post about the podcast too in the announcements section, and anybody can share on there as well. We love hearing from you. All right, y'all. Well, happy Lunar Samhain blessings to you. And until next time, I hope that you have an enchanted rest of your day ahead. If you liked this episode of the Expedition to Soul podcast, please rate, review, subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, it will really help us spread everyday magic, intention, and intuition to the masses and helps us so much as a small business. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. There are new episodes every Tuesday. And as always, thank you so much for listening and being part of the community here at the Sisters Enchanted. And we'll see you in the next episode.